Hey y'all, welcome to First Comes Love, Then Comes Marriage podcast. My name is Lindsey Jackson.
And I'm Aaron Jackson.
And this season we are doing love letters to our children as they are adults and they're thinking back, what were our parents thinking at this day and age? And the topic of this episode is mistakes.
Oh,
And I was hesitant for a little bit because of again, this is a thick topic. And we've done one in this series before. You go back. It's about regret. And what is the difference between a mistake and a regret? But let's talk about it.
yeah, start with that.
Let's talk about it. Let's dive in.
What do you feel like the difference is between a regret and a mistake?
Okay. Because when I was thinking about mistakes, okay, the difference between a mistake and regret, I feel like the mistake is the action, like what you do wrong.
Yeah.
And the regret is the feeling after. Because sometimes you can make a mistake and not regret it, right? you can make a mistake and kind of how we said in the episode is like, well, we don't regret anything because everything works out
Yeah.
for the good of those who love the Lord, and God doesn't make mistakes. But let's go back though, because we do as humans make mistakes. I'm watching this show called Forever on Netflix, and if you have not seen this show,
I haven't.
which you haven't, and we're gonna watch it together because that's how good this show is. I'm going to rewatch it with Aaron, but it is a show about young love based in LA. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is our story. Yeah,
It is not our story.
and it's
at
not
all.
our story at all. It's not our story at all.
She explained it to me and it's not our story.
I gave you tidbits,
Okay.
but I'm not going to give anything away because that's not the reason why we're doing this episode. But there is something in the story in this season right now, because they're just on season 1. It's 8 episodes. It's real quick. But there is the topic of children making mistakes. And big mistakes is like, oh, this is a mistake that changes your entire life. So, and in this show, it's like children should be allowed to make mistakes. And so I was just thinking about that because, we don't want our children, or at least we want to minimize the mistakes that they make, especially the big mistakes. And so one thing that came to my mind is like when people are like, you don't want to, get pregnant when you're young. You don't want to make that mistake because that's a mistake that changes your life. But there's so many other mistakes. And this is why the show talks about this, because the whole purpose was this mom was trying to prevent her daughter from getting pregnant as a teenager, but then she didn't see everything else that was happening to her daughter. So back to our topic of mistakes. What are you thinking about, like, making mistakes, how to recover from mistakes, things like that?
Right now, as a father of 3,
Yeah. 2 boys and a girl.
2 boys and a girl, just a mistake on my part is so, I feel like it's heavier than when I was a teenager or when I was like in my 20s. And that's because of the concept of time. It's like the older I get, the less time I have. The thing I feel like can time heals all wounds, but also like you can recover from any mistake off of time.
If you keep living,
Yeah,
eventually.
like Kim Kardashian turning her sex tape into like this empire of skims and stuff like that. Uh, like somebody could have been like, "Oh, that was a mistake," but it got turned into this. Um, like little things. I mean, that's one like grandiose example of a mistake that turned into something. But like every the shorter amount of time you have, if you make a mistake and then like you die, then people are gonna remember you for that. But like if you made a mistake and then you go on and you live for a very long time after that mistake, and people know you for that, but then you do stuff after that, people, it's like a footnote.
Right.
Um, like when Kobe Bryant, he had that charge, right?
Had a charge.
And when he passed,
Mistakes.
yeah, and when he passed, that was it was like a footnote. Somebody did mention it.
Somebody petty will mention it, but that's not what you remembered.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't like that. So I just feel like right now with my, if I was to make a mistake, it wouldn't be for the lack of trying to do the right thing. Um, so with all my decisions, I have to think about so much more. I was talking to Lindsay last night about last year and how I tore my Achilles, and me just thinking about back, like, was it worth it to play in that basketball league, even though it was like my unicorn space? But I was down for like 5 months,
Longer.
um, and like it took. I wasn't getting full pay. I was like 60% of my pay, and that really hurt because like we have these kids and like one's in private school and the other one's going to daycare and stuff like that, and it's just like, was that a mistake
Mm.
to play? Would it had happened again, or would it have happened if I had not played? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because even on the day that we played, like we were running late that day, and like the whole family came and stuff like that. It's just like, and so now I'm just on the. I have to think so much more into a decision to make sure that I'm not making a mistake. And then how do you recover from a mistake? One, the first thing is accountability. If it is a real mistake, you take accountability, or I take accountability for it. And then I also analyze, like, what were the steps that led me to this? Uh, and then how do I not do it again? So one of the things that I've talked about on this podcast, and people thought it was weird that I said it, but I was like, every day I choose not to cheat on Lindsay. And because, and so I was like, okay, what situation could I get myself into? Am I too friendly to this woman? Am I like, is this hug too long? It like, if I'm complimenting her because she does look nice, why do I feel the need to compliment this person, or should I compliment this person? Like, I have to think about these things all the time, and it's not like I'm a natural cheater. I just think that all men have, not all men, but like all heterosexual men admire women, right? And so like it's it's a thing. And I don't want to make that mistake of it. And let me just say, like, there's a difference between a mistake, and because it popped up in my head, there's a difference between a mistake and an accident, right? Like, cheating on somebody is possibly a mistake, but it's not an accident.
Right.
It didn't just happen. These are decisions. Sometimes accidents do happen. Uh, a car accident or something like that, or you know, I accidentally left my debit card into the ATM and they took it out before they took our money before our wedding, which did happen. Uh, like,
But yeah,
yeah,
the mistake is a decision.
yeah,
That's big.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, and
it's the wrong decision,
yeah,
and you might not know it at the time, or you might choose to do it at the time. Sometimes it's like, I sent a text message, and it was a mistake. It
yeah,
was I was angry, or I was hurt, or whatever it was, and you made that mistake, and you can't take it back. But it was a decision.
yes,
Yes,
and
I
yeah,
that's perfect.
and so I just think that how I would do it, yeah, take accountability, and also like knowing what led me up to that, because like everything has a source in therapy. That like, it's childhood trauma, right, for everything,
Right.
but everything has a source, and so it's, and back to my analogy of like the woman, it was like, oh, do am I complimenting this person because I want to compliment back? Or like, or is my ego feeling low? Am I like, is like certain things like that, and so uh as a dad right now, it and there was another episode about analysis paralysis, like what my dad does. It's kind of like that. It's like sometimes I am over analyzing. It's like, yo, it's not that big of a deal. But then I'm like, oh, it's a big deal. And so I end up like taking longer than I should. And so it's just like working on my processes faster. And like some things you just know, um, in basketball, it's called like passing, like I pass to the open man. Like sometimes on the inbound, somebody you wanted to get it to the star player, right? You want to give it to the star player, but he's getting covered by two people. And then there's one person that's an easy pass. Like sometimes the decision, do the one that is like clearly like the next step instead of going try to get to the complicated step. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to do now. It's like just take the easy steps where it's like the clear cut. How do you lose weight? You eat better, you exercise. That's the easy way, right? It's the hard way, but these are the clear cut steps. These are, let's not necessarily say easy, but these are paths that are already guided. You know these paths. Uh a more difficult way is getting on like one of those diet shots, right? But those cost thousands of dollars a month. Um, I know that because I looked it up.
I was like, what?
They do, unless you're covered.
Right, right.
But
Okay.
like those are different like steps, and you don't know the side effects for stuff like that and things like that. But you do know the side effects of exercising and eating right, and those are good side effects. So I'm just saying, when it comes to mistakes, it's tough, but just knowing if taking the time to analyze what happened, why it happened, and taking accountability, and then moving forward, I think that's the best way to go about it. Um, how would you deal with mistakes, or how do you feel about mistakes
Well,
at the ripe age of 38?
I know. Sometimes I feel like you don't recognize a mistake in the moment. Sometimes it's clear. It's right away. You made a mistake and you are like, whoa, uh-oh, because maybe you regret it right away. And then sometimes your ego, your pride gets caught up and you're like, I'm good,
Well,
or I did it right, or whatever it is. And when I think about mistakes as well, it's so important to have the right people around you, because it's like everybody makes mistakes. And I think that that's where it started. When you're younger, like you're saying, you can afford, or hopefully, and it's like our children, our young Black children in America, can't really afford to make mistakes. But it's like, hopefully, they're given grace and time, and you can afford to make mistakes.
yeah.
We fix them, we made a mistake, we talk about it, we go to your teachers, we whatever it is. There is a punishment, there are consequences, but you can make those mistakes. And then as adults, as we are now, like you're saying, we can't make that many mistakes.
Yeah.
We have responsibilities and people that depend on us, so those mistakes become more weighted. Now, when I'm thinking about like, okay, the people around us hopefully will be able to cover us and tell us when we make a mistake as well. Because a question I was going to ask you was, um, can you remember a mistake that you made? And when I think about me, I think, okay, I can remember a mistake that I've made and how in the moment I was like, well, they were wrong. No, but it was I made the mistake. I chose to do what I did. And
What was it?
okay, I think about this all the time because, and this is another thing, this person did not forgive me for that mistake. And that's their
Okay,
choice.
okay.
You want
Kid, I'm going to guess it.
Okay. Well, you just bringing up my mistakes, but go ahead. We vulnerable. We talking about things.
All right, I'll do a hint, and you just does it involve on stage in a push?
Yes.
Okay.
And because this is something that I was young and naive. And when I was on stage, I pushed this person that I did not like. And I did push her, but I did continuously run. We're supposed to run off stage. And I continuously like pushed her. I got to take accountability, right?
Yeah.
I continuously pushed her to go and move off stage. Now, she didn't like me and I didn't like her. But in the moment, I was like, girl, you got to move out the way. But I was
Here's the
wrong.
kicker.
Here's the kicker. She was pregnant. She was pregnant and I was young and I was just like, girl, move out the way. If you can't do this job, you got to get off the stage. And the reality is I was wrong. All that to say. And in this wrongness, it took me a minute to realize that I made a mistake because I had no empathy. Had no understanding. And really, my world was all about me. And I talk about this in previous episodes on how much I have grown through trauma, obviously. But like now I understand. Like I understand pregnancy now because I've been pregnant many times. But all that to say, I don't need to go through it to have understanding. And
I told you you were wrong when you did it.
you did.
Okay.
And this is my guiding force right here because he was like, nah. And I was like, girl, no. Because then the reason after that, this woman cursed me out. I mean, we was going back and
Oh,
forth.
yeah.
And in the end, like I apologized and I apologized years later again after that. But I think about that because took accountability, made the mistake, was very young, but the person did not forgive me. So it's like, well, what do I do? Right? How do I make amends and things like that? And really, I've forgiven myself because I have to move on.
Yeah.
And I know that I do more good than harm. And I made a mistake. And so that's like the overarching theme of mistakes is like we can't we cannot as people, and I hope that we teach our children this, is like you can't feel so bad that now you're not living or you're blaming yourself for so many things because you made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like we turn to God, we ask God for forgiveness, we
Yeah.
ask him to make us better, grow us. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna still think about it. And I'm like, thank you, Lord, of the mistakes that I could have made in my life. It's all right. She's fine. Her baby's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't destroy a life and things like that. Like, thank you again, a covering. But it is like, how do we, as people and as parents teach our children to, you're going to make mistakes. How do you fix those mistakes? And then how do you move on from those mistakes? Which it sounds like you got to move on, but you do. We have to live. How do you move on from them?
Yes, I will say this last thing. Some mistakes, like it could be like can change so many things.
So that we said, I mean, yeah, this is right. There
Yeah.
are drastic.
So there's some mistakes that you might think that might be a little thing, and it could be turn out deadly, especially being black in America. Like not even watching where you're going. Some of those are accidents, but like back in the day, it was like, oh, you stepped on somebody's shoes on accident, and you didn't feel like you said sorry because you're like, I'm walking, they're walking, they should have known, and that person kills you. Like people have been killed, especially in South Central. People have been killed over shoes. There are situations where it's just like you made a mistake, but if you do have the time to rectify that mistake, then take the time to do it and have the time. But you never know. I always tell, and I got this from Davin. He was like, you could choose your sin, but you can't choose the consequences. And so I always think about that because I'm like, yeah, like I can't say, hey man, ooh, I I stole this money. You know what? Action can't go to college. You know what I mean? Like I can't just choose a bad thing for me.
Right.
For yeah, or for somebody else. Uh I'm not God. I don't get that decision.
Yeah. But that's why, I mean, I was like, that's why we hope, we pray, we guide so that in learning, because we are always learning, in learning, we are hopefully not making those great drastic, life-changing mistakes. That's all we can hope for. So, but you didn't answer the question. Do you have a mistake that you can think of and how you
I said it. I feel like I made a mistake.
oh, with your Achilles?
Yeah, with my Achilles.
Really?
Uh,
That
you
without your
think it
control.
was an
I
accident?
don't think that was with it.
I don't know. I just think about it so much. A mistake. Um, I feel like Dubai was a mistake. I think about it a lot. I'm like, we could have went earlier.
Not gone, yeah.
Yeah, that's a long flight. But I'm not. I don't know. Like like what is like an actual mistake that I've done that I could just be like, oh, okay.
That you made the decision to well, you know what? You're also not an impulsive person. And I do think that what
What
goes
is
wrong
what?
with mistake
I'm,
is
I'm a spontaneous person, but I'm like I'm not impulsive. It's a weird thing. So like we could be doing something and I can spontaneously like let's all go to the park.
you're flexible with you
Yeah.
because you're also sometimes a little indecisive. That's not the same thing as spontaneous and impulsive. You kind of go, I don't want to be like you go with the wind, but the difference we say this all the time, like I am the planner and you are the free spirit.
I'm the water. I usually say I'm the water.
Okay, you can say that.
Yeah.
Okay. So and in that that's that is might be your guiding like your protection because with mistakes it's usually like
Keep going. Okay.
what?
Perfect. No, because I wanted to get into this briefly before the podcast ends. I did wanted to get into you were talking about guiding and how like my mindset is and how I flow. It's a thing that growing up I used to have this really this sense of making stuff up to God. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Uh it's like I feel like I was raised where I can do for God by like I could earn favor
Uh-huh.
for God. Like I can do this and I could do this and he'll give me more favor because of this. Uh and as I got older, I was like and like I'm having kids. That relationship between like God the Father, right? And we are his children. I am his child. It's it hits a little bit more differently because I know that one, I know that I'm forgiven and I know where my heart is. I know where my love is. And so I am not bound by the regrets and I'm not bound by like things like I can make a mistake and have accountability, but I am not held in the past and thinking that, oh, woe is me. Uh, it's going to be detriment and all this stuff to me because the same way I actually might make a mistake on a birthday card and write the wrong name or Shine might write his H's the wrong way or something like that. I'm covering them in the same way that I might make a mistake where I leave. I keep saying like my debit card, but I lose my wallet or I lose my keys or something like that. Because I'm drinking too much and I took the train instead of taking an Uber, stuff like that. Um, just as a sense of I always thought growing up in the church that I had to do for God, and I don't. He's too powerful. Like my concept of God is like I can't really do for him, but I do because I love him.
Mm-hmm.
I do because I represent him, but I'm not doing it for like, hey, look at me type of thing. Uh, because his love is, beyond my understanding. And his coverage and his grace, we get graces, new mercies every morning. And I just want to like the freedom that I have in that. like the freedom from mistakes or the freedom from regrets
Mhm.
that I have, I want to instill in action and shine and live because it really, like I said, like I, I always thought like, okay, yeah, you don't have sex before marriage. That's gonna equal like you're gonna have a happy marriage and you're gonna have babies whenever you want and all these good things, bountiful, bountiful, bountiful. It was a transaction.
It was an equation.
Yes,
2 plus 2 does not equal 4.
yes,
Just
and
because
so
you did
yeah,
this and you did get into college does not mean that you are gonna get a job.
job,
Gonna
yeah.
it doesn't
Yes,
work
and
that way.
so, growing up in the church, it seemed like and maybe that was just the way that my mind processed it, but it really did seem like a transactional thing.
Mhm.
Like, I'm doing this and then if I do this, I get this, and it's not like that. Shine sometimes cuts up, but on his birthday, he's getting Sonic and all this stuff. You get and so and it's because we love him and he has favor and I am loved and I have favor. And so I just one of the things is I like just wanted to mention that. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you process religion or relationship with God like that, or the way that you moved? It was like, okay, if I do this, then God will give me this. If I do this, then God will give me this.
Yeah, I think everybody initially, when you think about it that way, especially like you saying, growing up in the church, and then just like with our parents, maybe, for me, it's like you do these chores and you get this freedom,
Hmm.
so your actions do um, dictate the blessing or the punishment on the other side, essentially. And so, yeah, I get that concept completely. Um, I also, like you were saying, I do get that and I was always taught that there is a covering over us no matter what we do. So we do for God because yes, we love him and also he calls us to do it, right? He's commanded us to love other people.
Hmm.
There are commandments to not steal, to, you know, all of these right things to do. So, yeah, we do because we love him and we do because it's what we're supposed to do. Good Samaritans and all the things. So it's like we do them and in doing them, the expectation is that on the other side God will bless us. Well, he'll bless us because then also we're good people and good people, good comes to good. That was also my ideal. But I think that the theme rather is that no matter what, God protects us. And I operate on that because I do remember like when you're kids and you don't know what's happening, but you're walking down the street carelessly and naive, and you're just like, I remember when I woke up from my naivety, but in that, I know that God was always protecting me.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know what I just avoided behind me. There could have been a car crash, there could have been anything, but he moved me along and there was protection. And so I think that way as well about mistakes. It's like he gives us free will and you can make your own decisions and you can make your own choices. And then after you do that, he is still protecting us. And I
Yes.
mean, that's my prayer. And that's what I believe.
Yes, you have been thinking about all the time. So I grew up and I had the most wonderful childhood. I had friends, we all hung out.
Mhm.
Uh and I didn't think till like when I was older and I was in college, I was telling people about like my life and like certain things. I, I was like, "Oh, these people see this as like traumatic." One of the things like you're talking about being naive, I remember the Rodney King riots. I remember it. Um, I remember that there were people running down my street with stuff. I remember this. I was like 4, 5.
Mhm.
I remember looking out the window. Uh, but it was in South Central.
Mhm.
That's where I was. and my house was protected. And I know they what like my house wasn't like a, but it could, yeah, but also it didn't get, yeah, and it wasn't a business, like it wouldn't have got looted. But like I was just like, ooh, I was just looking at the window like it was TV, right? And like I remember a drive-by shooting that happened right next door.
I
And
I remember my dad telling me about a shooting. It was like Angelo got shot.
yeah, right in front of the house. Yeah, right across the street, across the street.
I was like, what?
And so like these things,
Yeah, man.
I remember, like, I take pride in being a pallbearer because I've done it so many times. And like, I was talking to people like my age, 30. I was like, "You ever been a pallbearer?" They was like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting," because I've done it like 6 times. Uh, Either for like aunties, but also for like friends, associates, like 8, maybe like 5, like Wyatt's age, like guys like that, that Alfred, like things like that. Jarvis, who's like a little brother to me, but like things like that, and I was like, yeah, I get to carry them. And so it's almost like the process of that naivety, and also I was protected because here I am today talking about how I had this great childhood, uh having the coverage, being in areas is like the danger seen and unseen, right? And for me it was like unseen, like I did see some, like I knew like, oh, don't hang around them or stuff like that.
Yeah, we see some things, and there's so many things that we don't see.
Yeah,
And there is that, we understand that. Like I do take moments of gratitude, and I'm like, for especially like Black men, it's like for you, this grown Black man, to have made it. And I'm
yeah,
like, I wonder what your mom just looks at you and cries because you her baby. And it's just like you made it out of so many situations that could have taken you out.
yeah. I've had many situations with the LA County Sheriff.
I mean, the one time they was knocking on our door, the window, when we was making out.
Oh yeah,
It was a fongy.
yeah,
Talk about the stuff
yeah.
we used to do.
Oh yeah, and that could have turned into something
That could
crazy.
we were literally in the park, and they was like, "Joe, what are y'all doing? It's foggy windows in here."
Yeah,
When you was driving, and I was sitting on your lap, making
yeah.
out, trying to get
My very first time driving Lindsey and Dee Dee, we went to
his name is Dee Dee.
it was a Burgundy Honda, 1986, I think. Um, the very first time I was driving Dee Dee with you, we went to Dockweiler, and remember I pulled him to the parking lot and I got a ticket,
Yep.
and he was like, "Oh, the ticket is for a seatbelt or something like that."
And didn't you guys have a seatbelt? Like
You didn't. It was like you didn't have a seatbelt, but he gave the ticket to me. It was something like, it was weird, but it was kind of like these interactions that I had could have been worse, way worse, and like I was just protected. Um, but what are your final thoughts about mistakes and like finding favor with God? To the 34-year-old, 37-year-old,
our
38
children was, yeah.
adult
mean,
children.
Mistakes are going to happen. And that's like reality. Like we are not done growing and learning, us at this age, and how we always talk about like our parents who are still alive, my mom and your parents, thank God, and they listen to this podcast and they're like, what? They're still in their 30s?
Yeah.
They got so much more living to do. So we are not done living and learning and growing. And so therefore we're not done making mistakes. And that's pretty scary to think about. But I pray and I know that God is always with me. Boom. So that's my final thought about mistakes, is that like we live in a protection of God is with us, and in the mistakes that we will make, we are going to be covered and see our way through. And that's the final thoughts for me.
Yeah.
What you got?
My final thoughts about mistakes. Like even though it might be the right intention, it still might be the mistakes, and the accountability part is the biggest thing, because like me, somebody saying the N word, like a black person saying the N-word at work because they forgot the code switch or something like that, and then they get fired or something like, something like a simple mistake like that is like, you could recover from it. And just taking accountability and just learning it. And I just feel like it's okay. Just knowing the thought process, what led you there. Just knowing, and it's not always forget about it. It's a mistake, but it's not like don't forget about it. It's learn from it. Your mom says it all the time. As long as I'm living, I'm learning. She says it all the time. But that's the thing, like learn, the cliche, learn from your mistakes and learn about why those mistakes were made. And I feel like that's the way to make less, really.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right.
So the poll question, should it just be simple? Like, have you made a mistake and taken accountability for it? Because that's like hand in hand.
Okay. All right. Like your last mistake, have you made up for it yet?
Yeah.
No?
I mean, I don't know. Well, we will put a poll up.
Yeah.
And
Because this is a tricky one.
I want y'all to, and also it's like, how do you reflect on things? Because I know for me, it's journaling. Like I sit, I write to God, I think about my thoughts. I like to write things down. So that is a way that I reflect on my decisions. For you, it might be talking to whomever about it, getting it out, and then that confidant speaks back to you. I don't know, but it's like, how do you process it as well? And that's a way to understand those mistakes. But either way, we do want you to communicate with us, you know what I mean? So you can DM us on Instagram, First Comes Love, PCM.
You can always subscribe, like, share, comment on the YouTube. That's at First Comes Love.
And you can email us, let's talk at firstcomeslove, thenComesMarriage.com.
Talk to you Tuesday.